as you can see today, it is not a nice day down here in South Texas. It is raining, but it's that real misty, thin, soak everything kind of rain, right? And it's a little chilly. It's only 73 degrees. I know, we're spoiled down here, right? Anyway, it is a rainy day. It's a little, I don't know, foggy out here, I guess, in addition to the rain. So it's a good thing that the solar eclipse that probably has already happened by the time you see this video is not today, because we wouldn't see anything except a little bit of darkness, I guess. So how is the Jeep Wrangler in the rain? Now, first of all, I'm talking specifically about the two-wheel drive. Because that's what I'm in. And I had a rather scary experience in the two-wheel drive Jeep a few years ago, many years ago actually. I was actually driving in conditions that were wet. There had been a rainstorm that went through. It was rush hour in the morning on a freeway that had a big sweeping kind of curve on it. One that also had a hill, so you couldn't see beyond the curve. So I'm on my way to work. It had just rained, and it was at the point where the pavement had started to dry in spots, right? Don't forget about the Jeep ride. Anyway, the pavement had started to dry in spots. I was on a wet spot on the pavement, and I was going around that curve, and I was in the fast lane. I was probably hitting 70, probably 70. It was rush hour, and it was stop and go traffic. I had gotten into a clearing. So I'm going around the curve, and I'm just cruising on the wet pavement, and I get around the curve and traffic is stopped. So I'm like, oh God, you know, I'm moving. I slam on the brakes because I had to slam on the brakes. But when I did that, I actually started to slide a little bit, and then I hit dry pavement. I was turning at the same time off of the curve. So the tires, which were a Meteor, more aggressive tire, grabbed that dry pavement, took the Jeep one way, and then flipped the other way when it came back. It actually went off the ground on two wheels. I don't know that it was a lot. I'm not saying I was driving sideways down the freeway or anything, but enough that when I slammed back down, my head went over and smashed against the roll bar. And it wasn't a covered roll bar back in that day. It was just steel, right? So I slammed my head on that after I came down the other way. Scared me, let's just say. And I kind of got a little funky towards Jeeps from then on, because, you know, they do have that higher center of gravity anyway. And if you do something stupid like I did, well, bad results can happen, right? So I didn't have that Jeep that long after that. Now, why I say you have to be careful, you and me, is because there is such a higher center of gravity in the Jeep. And if you get into a situation like that, I mean, I was lucky I didn't roll the Jeep. I'm really surprised it didn't happen. It could have. And fortunately, traffic was far enough ahead that I had a little bit of room to maneuver, I guess. But there's a couple of areas. One, obviously, the example I just gave you, if you're going around a curve or something, you better be prepared to stop, particularly if it's wet, because if you slam on the brake due to panic, which I did, you're going to slide, and that could be an issue. Driving around anywhere that I had a car just about ready to pull out in front of me. I don't know why. I guess he didn't see the yield sign. Give me a break, man. Pay attention to the road. I guess that's another peril, but that's not Jeep specific. That's just driving. I mean, I could see their yield sign. Give me a break. So anyway, you have to be careful of that. It's not really you need to be careful, but you need to be aware. Jeeps, because of the wheelbase, the shorter, sometimes narrower, depending on the wheel and tire setup you have, wheelbase, and the road, loves to ride the cup of the road. A lot of roads have a built-in cup in them, if you will. It means that the Jeep kind of wants to go back and forth. It's almost like you're riding on a rail, right? You're kind of straddling that cup in the road. It's to keep water off the road, right? When it's pouring down rain, you don't want it pooling on the road, so you want the road cup so it runs off either side, right? But anyway, the Jeep will try to ride that cup. And you have to be aware that it's kind of a funky feeling if you're not, right? I mean, the first time you're out driving in your brand new Jeep and you experience one of those roads, particularly if they're more severe, and obviously some of them are more severe than others, it's going to try to ride back and forth. And depending on how severe that cupping is, it can even pull you a little bit. So you just need to be weary of that. And the only time I've really ever experienced it, strangely, is in a Jeep Wrangler 2-door. Again, I would attribute it to the narrower wheelbase or the shorter wheelbase. I don't know. It's just kind of odd. The other big thing that I've seen out there, and I actually witnessed this myself, is if you lift your Jeep, make sure that you go to a qualified shop that knows what the heck they're doing, somebody who's experienced. I was on the freeway, and by chance it was this same freeway, completely different spot, actually going the other way. And I'm following a Jeep. It was lifted, looked good, had bigger wheels and tires, and it sat up a bit. I mean, it looked really good. And then I noticed all of the wheels on this Jeep started doing this. It was the Jeep shimmy, you know, the death wobble. You've probably heard of it, maybe you haven't. But all of the wheels, all 4 of them were doing this on the road. Now, this cat was driving at least 65 miles an hour. I think they might have been going faster. But the funny thing about it, they didn't stop. They just kept going. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? I mean, the whole Jeep was shaking, right? I mean, when your tires are doing this, the whole rest of the body and everything else is going nuts, right? Didn't seem to bother them at all. They just kept going like it was normal. Again, it's the Jeep wobble, the death wobble, the Jeep shimmy, whatever you want to call it. And it's because, without going into great detail, basically because the lift, the wheel and tire setup, the extra parts or whatever, were not done correctly on the lift. It can happen, and it's a big problem, obviously, if it's not done right. So just make sure that I would always bring it up anyway. You know, hey, am I going to have the Jeep wobble or the death wobble or whatever after this is done? And see what the shop tells you. They should certainly be aware of it because it's not an uncommon thing. Other than that, I mean, the Jeep is a blast to drive. You just have to drive it a little bit differently. You can't take curves at 90 mile an hour because it's going to want to kind of do this a little bit. Ever seen a Jeep in a ditch on its side? I've seen that before too, and I'm sure that's because somebody decided they could take that curve faster than they should have. Leave a comment. Let me know. You ever run into any weird issues with your Jeep specifically, and particularly if it's the 2-wheel drive? I'd be very curious to know if I'm the only one that's ever had anything like that happen. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Bye.